We are on the beach in Cape Coast, and I'm looking at like the Atlantic Ocean right now. Almost tripped. So nice though. I really like my outfit. We're on the beach. Let me show it to you guys. Period. People are already taking photos and stuff. I want to take some photos too. I thought we were gonna do the canopy tour today. That's why I wore this outfit, but nevertheless, here we are. On the road again. I can't wait to get on the road again.
Darling, my oh my oh my, see my darling, my oh my, see my darling. We lost a lot of our ancestors to walk from the hinterlands to get here. From here to the dungeons, through the middle passage to the new world, lots of our ancestors died. A lot more died on the plantations where they took them. Several of them had to sacrifice themselves for their brothers and sisters to survive to see the next daylight. We as descendants of our ancestors get to see each other today because of all those sacrifices. I would like us to take just 1 minute of our time to have a silent moment for the ancestors. After the 1 minute silence, I will say, may their souls rest in perfect peace. And we shall all respond by saying, Ashin. But then let me hide you in it. May the spirits of our lost ancestors rest in perfect peace. Ashin. An awareness of our past is essential to the establishment of our personalities and our identities as Africans. That's a quote from Emperor Haile Selassie. From Marcus Messiah Garvey Jr., actually borrowed by Bob Marley. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery, none but ourselves can free our minds. As Africans in the diaspora, even though we know that our ancestors were from these parts of the continent, from Africa, we don't know where in Africa they are from. But then if we are allowed to talk about them, or if we are allowed to learn about them, then we get to know where on this continent they are from, because they leave a clue in their own stories. Secondly, we live in a society that is full of their influences and interferences. Even here in Africa, our educational systems, we don't get to learn about this topic until we are in the university. If you choose the path of history, then you are lucky. If you don't, you go to marketing and others, you don't get to know anything at all. If I get to know my history and I teach my brothers and sisters, these little ones, they don't keep information to themselves. They will go whispering it to their friends in the schools. Once they get to the school, they are going to ask their teachers if they know this topic or not. Now you dare not to tell them that you don't know. If you tell them you don't know the topic, they are going to teach the entire school. The only thing they are scared of is that the children will get to know how horrible their ancestors were. Take for instance, Christopher Columbus. They claim he discovered America. But then in actual sense, the man didn't discover the land. He got lost. The natives of the land found him. They saved his life. At the end of the day, he paid them with evil. Then George Washington. He became a president. No one can take that away from him. But I want to know how his family earned their fortunes. It was through slavery. Isn't this an American history? It is. So why is this not being taught in schools? Because they want to hide the truth away from their own children. If they hide it from us, then you don't get to their children. That's the second part. Lastly, they are afraid of our powers. They are afraid that if we get to know the entire stories, we would treat them the same way they would have treated us if they were in the ones in our shoes. Take for instance, they treated our ancestors unfairly, brutalized them, took them through starvation and hunger, everything like that. So they are scared that if the black communities get to know their entire stories, they would want to treat them the same way they treated their ancestors. And do you think that is what we are looking for? Absolutely not. You see, if we get to know about our ancestors, then we know the powers they wield, their resiliency. They are not people who give up. On this land, we have so much resources, and the only thing is we are struggling to use them. It has always been the advantages of the Europeans. Before they came here, our ancestors, for territorial basis, they wanted to expand their territory, so they fought against each other. Due to that, they had victims of wars. The victims, though, were never enslaved. Rather, they were inducted into their various cultures, and they practiced a system called indentured servitude, which was far different from chattel slavery. Europeans started sailing across oceans and came into contact with this particular continent in the year 1400s. They were the ones who changed the name from Akebuland to Africa. The word Africa was derived from a Latin word Africa, which literally means sunny. From the Greek word Afrik, spelled Aprike, that word means a land without cold. Did you feel it? You feel the humid nature of the land, right? That's exactly what they felt, and they decided to name the land after it. But many griots or historians here in Africa believe the true meaning of the word Africa is the children or the people of the sun. As you realize, as Africans, we are blessed with the melanin. It allows us to absorb the energy from the sun, and afterwards we glow. That's exactly why they had to name the land. 1471, led by Prince Henry the Navigator, the Portuguese got to these coastal zones. They met a lot of gold along the coastal belts, started picking them. The only thing they had to do was to name the land, and they named it Gold Coast. Went to Togo, Benin, Nigeria. From there, they got a lot of our ancestors enslaved, shipped out of the land, so they named it the Slave Coast. On the west coast is Ivory Coast because of the lot of ivories they got from the elephants. So whatever they benefited from the land, they will name the land after it. For a couple of decades, they've been here. In the year 1482, they requested for a land to build the very first castle. It was a trading post. The castle at Edina in Elmina, Castillo de Elmina, or the St. George's Castle, was built, completed. They went into the trade with our people, basically for the gold, ivory, pepper, spices. But then in return, they were paying our ancestors with tobacco, whiskey, mirror, schnapps. How much is gold and how much is tobacco? They paid for gold with tobacco and whiskey and all this stuff. You put the tool on a scale, you see the gold goes like this, telling you that it has more weight and value than the other stuff they used to pay for them. In other words, they don't want you to tell them that they stole from you, so they give you something in return. So I asked only 2 questions when I was in the history class with my professor. I asked him, why, number one, a trading post has prisons. They requested for a land to build a trading post, which is the Elmina Castle. St. George's Castles were built with dungeons at the bottom of it. What are dungeons for? Prisoners. So would you build a prison in your manufacturing company? Would you build a prison in a market? So why would they build the prison at the bottom of the castle, claiming it was for gold, ivory, paper, spices? A trading post, why do you have that there? Secondly, when the message got to Prince Henry and his people and they went into the trade, they moved our ancestors in the same ships that they came here with during the 1471 journey. They never reconstructed them, so I asked why they didn't reconstruct the ships to move our ancestors. You see, Professor got a little bit shaky and furious. He thought I ought to know, not because he was angry that I asked a silly question. The topic he gave me was the sub-Saharan Arab slave trade. He said, go read on this, and after that, a week, come back to class, give me your findings. After reading this topic, I got to realize that the Europeans were in the know. That particular trade, sub-Saharan Arab slave trade, lasted for nearly 700 years before the arrival of the Europeans here, from the 7th century to the 14th century. And that trade took place from the 7th century to the 19th century. It only faded when the Europeans arrived here. So then after reading the topic, I got to realize that the Europeans were studying this trade long before they even started the journey, and even their ships. So after knowing the people very well, that was when they sold their ideas to the chiefs, telling chiefs that, look, I'm going to divide this group into 2. This group of people here were from your warfares. You fought them, claiming they were your enemies. Why then do you have them closer to your people now? The system you have, the indentured servitude, allows them to be free. No one was in chains and shackles. But then if they are closer to each other, they get to learn your strengths and weaknesses. If care is not taken and they decide to fight for their land back, they will take you down. There is nothing you can do. But then we are here to help you out. We came with weapons, guns, gunpowder. We would like to provide you with some. Protect your territories. But then you have to pay us back. The payment requested for was that they gave them the victims of wars, and then they will take them away and they will supply them more guns. This was how they got the first group of our ancestors out of this land. The ancestors, I call them naive. Because they believe strangers over their own people, they gave the victims of wars out, took the guns and gunpowder in return. At this point, when they said we sold each other, would you believe it or not? I do. The reason why I did believe that is we sold each other is there are only three stages in a transaction: the proposal or the offer. Then we have the agreement and the exchange. These 3 stages were executed. When they proposed that they will give you guns and gunpowder in return for the victims of wars, you considered it, you gave the victims of wars out, you took the guns and gunpowder in return. It has sealed the trade. For a couple of decades, even though it was under a different circumstance, I still believe we did sold each other. For a couple of decades, that was how they were getting their very first source of slaves out of this land. But then demand started shooting up to the highest scale. That was when the Dutch, the Danish, the Spanish, the British, the French, together with the Swiss, they all came into this land in an attempt to have exactly what the Portuguese were shipping out of the land. They had to fight each other. The Portuguese would not allow any other group of Europeans into the land to deal with the people. They were the first here. So they would want the rest to come through them so they can lead the way. But the rest are like, you know what, that ain't happening. We had to fight each other. So they fought for nearly 130 years. In the year 1651, the British took over and they introduced raiding, kidnapping, ambushing, burning homes. We never had roofings or buildings like this. They were all mud houses with the thatch and then straw roofings. If they light that up, as a father, as a mother, in the room with your children, you go for your material things or you pick your child to attempt to escape the fire. You take your child. By the time you get out of that, guns are pointed at you. They were all forced into chains and shackles, being children, pregnant women, inclusively with the men. They were made to walk for so many miles. This plant, can you see how it's behaving?
Oh. Wait.
This is different. It's just like that.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Come this way, let me show you. At the time when the ancestors were being hunted down, others were trying to save the land by protecting themselves from these captives. They never had any device to tell them that these captives are trying to connect into their territories and get there. So then the ancestors were using that plant as a secret motion sensor. They had to rely on this plant to save their brothers and sisters. They were forced into the chains and shackles, moved across these oceans, hadn't survived the journey. Where would we be? You ask yourself this question and you realize that you have achieved a lot for yourself. Your academics and everything you have was because somebody sacrificed for you. And now that you are here, what would you tell them? Imagine you are walking through that gate and you come across your ancestors smiling. What message do you have for them? Together. Let's get to the river, and when you are at the river, you pray about it and we come back, okay? So please take a walk with me.
sad. I'm happy. On the first, later, I'll get